Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today I am filming a very excited video, and if you have read the title for this, you know already what it is, and that is Asian book recommendations. Last year I filmed another version of this where I had 50 Asian book recommendations. I'm not going to repeat any of the ones in that video. Here I have a bit over 30, so it's less in this one, but also together with the other one you have now over 80. Some of the ones I forgot to put in my last video, and then also all the other Asian books I have read since then. So there's basically a lot of books in different genres. Hopefully you can find something here that suits your tastes. Sad part is, since I can't repeat from last year, I can't talk about Jade City and Parkway War. But yeah, if you're watching this and haven't watched the other one, I do recommend checking that out as well. So if I don't mention them here, they might be in that video. And then maybe this will become a yearly thing where we'll do another version next year if I have read enough Asian books for the next year. I probably have. Different genres are gonna be time-stamped. If you're not interested in a certain genre, then you can skip or like go back to watch this video if you want more in a certain genre or whatever you're reading. The dog is sneezing right beside me. It's fine. Obviously, I'm not going to share my thoughts on these books myself. I'm just going to give a general synopsis and then you will see if you're interested in yourself. Another thing to note is that while all of these are written by Asian authors, they might not always follow Asian main characters, but it is a way to support Asian authors, etc. And now, without further ado, let's get started. And here you have 30 plus Asian book recommendations. First thing we're starting off with is adult fantasy, and the first book I have is The Wolf of Orinjaro by K.S. Veloso. This is the first book in a trilogy, I believe, and it follows a queen of a divided kingdom. When she married a king, he disappeared in the middle of the night, and then we are set in the years later. The kingdom is in havoc because of this, and then she gets a message from him telling her to meet him, as well as an attempt on her life makes the story start off now in this first book. I'm gonna show off one of my favorite books, so I cannot help but say that at least, and that is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This one is the first one in a series, but we don't really have any news of the second book yet, so you have to check it out. I have 2 editions and I have to show them both off. Okay, this is a story that's set in Alpha China in 3045. It has war, destiny, and epicness, and this China is under harsh Mongol rule. So we follow a main character who is actually kind of nameless, and then her brother has this great big destiny, but he ends up dying. So she decides, instead of, I was gonna say, spiraling away and not do anything, she decides to take over his destiny and his name to become great. And that's how the story starts out. And that's all you need to know, but it's just so good. Just saying. Then we have Black Water Sister by Sancho. This is more of a contemporary Malaysian fantasy. Our main character Jess goes back to Malaysia after being broke. She's also closeted lesbian, and then this ghost appears kind of inside the body but also outside it to talk to her, saying it is her grandma, aka the Black Water Sister, and then she wants revenge of the people who wronged her, and then Jess is in between of all these things going on, and it is kind of scary for her, so you need to read the book to figure out what happens to her. Then we have The Chosen and the Beautiful, Mariniwa. This one is a Great Gatsby retelling. We follow Jordan Baker, who in this is queer and Asian and adopted. So we just have, you know, the 1920s setting and just her trying to survive in this place where she doesn't really fit in because of her race, etc. And then the last adult fantasy this time around, we have The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Shuri. I would say that this could also go as a YA, so if you like YA and you think this is intimidating, I do still think you can read it, just saying. This basically is inspired by Indian history and epics, and it follows a captive princess and her maid servant gonna change the world together, I would say. That's like the biggest thing I could say, but we follow these 2 different characters, both of their point of views. There's also an FF romance, and it's a great time. Now going into YA fantasy, which is also not that many of, surprisingly. So the first series here, I think I just forgot to mention in my last video, and that is the 3 Dark Crown series. So there's actually 4 books, and then this tiny one here is a novella, and this is by Kendra Blake, and it's basically set on this island called Fenburn, and every generation there is a set of triplets being born, and they need to fight to the death when they're 16 to become the queen of the island, and only one is supposed to be left standing. Then we have this duology called These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and here's a sequel, Our When Violet Ends. I haven't actually read a sequel yet, and this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1926 China. and we have these two gangs being at each other's throats, of course. And then we follow Juliet and Roma, of course, from the two different gangs that has to work together because there's this monster suddenly going around killing people. So both of the gangs want to figure out what's happening and they're forced to work together. Then we have another duology, which is the Never Tilting World duology by Winter Pecco. And here in this world, two twin goddesses used to rule the world until 17 years ago. A betrayal happened, which made them break the world into two parts. One part with an unrelenting sun and another part with an unrelenting night. And now, 17 years later, the heirs of the two goddesses are being, I would say, pulled back to the center of where the breaking happened, and we follow 4 point of views that has to do with this, trying to figure out what happened and maybe perhaps fix it. And then the last YA fantasy, which also could be a bit sci-fi, but I think it's like in between sci-fi and fantasy, so I'm just putting in like before we go into sci-fi. That is The Girl from Everywhere by Heidi Heilig. This one also has a sequel, which I can't remember the name for right now, and it is a duology, I think, so it is finished. And this one basically follows Nyx, who was in this ship that is her father's. This ship can go anywhere as long as they have a map made from that time. So basically, it could travel in time. That's what I'm trying to say, the ship itself. And her father is obsessed with finding this one map from the time, the year / whatever, when her mother, aka the love of her father's life, died, because he's trying to bring her back. But saving her might mean that Nyx wouldn't exist because, well, she birthed her. Yeah, things that happen around that could change Nyx's life. So we're just trying to figure out how this will be solved, etc. Very interesting. Now, going into sci-fi, I didn't split it into YA and adult because it's basically like 4 books. I actually did have the rest of the genres too, but usually I go from adult down to YA, but I will tell you when we shift over. So the first adult sci-fi we have is Version 0 by David Yoon. This one follows Max, who works for this big tech company, and he finds out dark sides about his company and wants to bring them down, aka them getting consequences for the dark stuff they're doing. But this also brings huge dark consequences for what Max decides to do. But yeah, that was actually the only adult sci-fi I had. Just like last video, I also had one adult sci-fi. It was a bit funny. This is YA sci-fi. The first one we have is The Ones We're Meant to Find by Yuan He. We follow 2 perspectives. First we have C, who is stuck on this island and she can't remember anything about her life. The only thing she can remember is that she has a sister and needs to go back to her. But she's stuck on this island in the middle of the ocean. And then we follow Casey, who is in this world which is full of natural disasters and things are really not going well in society. Most things are happening like in the virtual world. She also does have a sister that disappeared, and she's trying to figure out if she should follow clues to find her or just live her own life. It's a sister story, let's say that at least. And then we have Gearbreakers by So Anna Mikuta. The sequel to this is coming later this year. I think it's called God Slayers. And this is set in a futuristic world where we are under this tyrannical rule. And then we follow 2 perspectives of 2 girls. We have Eris, who is a gearbreaker. They are working against this rule, trying to bring them down. And then she ends up in a prison for the Godolia. And then she meets another girl called Sona, and they work together to, well, bring down the whole thing, I would say. And yes, this is also a FF romance. The last sci-fi I have here, this one is Tiger Honor, which is the companion novel to Dragon Pearl. I did have Dragon Pearl in my last video, but I felt like it was okay to have Tiger Honor here since it is a companion. Follow Sebin, who is a young tiger spirit. They are also non-binary, and they really want to join the 1000 World Space Force, but then their uncle is braided a traitor. And then they need to join as well to bring the honor of the family back. But we also meet characters from Dragon Pearl. I do recommend reading that first. But you could still read this actually without having read Dragon Pearl. It's just much more of a fun experience if you read both. And that is more like a middle grade sci-fi. Now we are going into fiction, and I think it's a bit funny because I think I almost have more fiction altogether than I have sci-fi fantasy, which are like my favorite genres. It is what it is. So first we just have like normal fiction stuff, and I'm gonna try to say again if we shift genres within fiction. So then we have Winter in Saksho by Elisa Shua Dusapin. And this one is just set in Saksho, which is a little town on the border of the North and South Korea. And then we follow this woman who works in this guest house. She is a French Korean woman, and then this French dude comes to stay there. They get like a bit of a weird relationship, trying to help each other in a way. That's basically it. Then we have The Vegetarian by Hong Kong. This one just follows a woman who suddenly decides to become a vegetarian after having this nightmare. It just basically follows her derailing to become a vegetarian in a really unhealthy way. We follow the different perspectives of her family members seeing her life unravel in a way. Yeah. Then we have Secret Daughter. I have the Norwegian edition, which is why it says India's Daughter on the cover, by Shilpi Somaya Gowda. So this one follows kind of two perspectives, where we have two women that interconnect in a way. We have one woman living in America, cannot have children, and we have another woman in India who has a child that she cannot keep, and then the woman in America ends up adopting her child. They don't know each other, of course, though. And then we follow just them throughout the years and how this has affected them, adopting as well as adopting away, and then actually the child that got adopted. And then we just have this beautiful story about family, basically. Then we have Please Look After Mother by Kyung Sok Shin, or Please Look After Mom, it is also titled. And this one basically follows the 69-year-old woman who gets lost in the subway where she was with her husband, and then she goes missing. So we have her children and her family looking for her, and through looking for her we get to ask ourselves really like, who is mom? Did they really know her? We get to see the interactions she had with the different family members and like how they all really saw her differently. That is that. Fiction is so weird to describe because it's a plot, but it's not a plot, you know. Then we have Kim Ji-young, born 1982, by Sho Nam-yoo. This one just follows Kim Ji-young, who is the most common name, most common woman in Korea. She is now depressed, acting out stress, insane, or is she though? So basically Kim Ji-young gets like kind of a critical assessment from a psychiatrist here because her husband made her go there after she kind of has, I would say, a mental breakdown. And then we just get to see an ordinary woman in Korea, and it's very interesting. I hope I said that all of these are adult, because all of these are adult. I will tell you when we go into YA. So we have Heaven by Mieko Kawakami. It follows teenagers, but it's definitely an adult book. And we follow one teen who has a lazy eye, and he gets bullied really extremely at school. And then we have another person that contacts him, a girl in his class. And they kind of form this friendship because they're both getting bullied. That's basically the story. It's really hard to describe fiction. The dog is literally walking around so much right now. Please just be still. You are tripping in my video. And then we have If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura. And this one basically follows this dude that finds out that he is going to die really soon of terminal disease. Or illness is the word, sorry. And then he gets a visit from the devil that offers him one more day of living if he makes something disappear from the world. So he chooses one new thing every day. And then you see the story unravel from there. It's definitely like, you know, of course, a bit of like a magical aspect because of this, but it's still a fiction book. Then we have one historical fiction book that's like actually historical fiction. Silence by Shusuka Ando. And this one follows a Portuguese priest that goes to Japan in the 17th century under the height of Christian being persecuted in Japan. So we basically follow to see how Christians were being treated in that time. It's very interesting, very brutal. But yeah, one also kind of classic, and yeah, in one video, yay to me. Now we are going to a bit of YA before going back to adult again when we kind of shift genres to non-fiction. So the first we have here is Tiny Pretty Things, as well as its sequel Shiny Broken Pieces by Sona Sharapotwa and Danielle Clayton. So one of the authors is Asian here. This is basically like a soapy drama thing that reminds me a lot of Pretty Little Liars. We follow two perspectives. We have Gigi, Beth and June. They are basically attending this really prestige and high exclusive ballet school. And we will see them doing everything they can to get the roles that they want. It's very intense and a lot of drama. Then we have The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X.R. Pan. So this one follows Lei, whose mother died, and she's convinced her mother was reborn into a bird. She's also half white and half Asian, and she's always, you know, not maybe felt as connected with her Asian side. And then she goes to Taiwan to meet her mother's parents for the first time, like her grandparents. And this is where she finds things out about her family and her family's past and reconnecting more with that side of her life. And she also has this kind of crush on her best friend, maybe. But yeah, it's really beautiful. And then we have An Emotion of Great Delight by Tara Mafi. This one is set in 2003, where the height of Islamophobia raised a lot in the States. And we follow a main character who wears a hijab and it scores a lot of hate because of this, of course. Then she also has lost her brother recently, like he died, and then she also loses her best friend, but she didn't die, they just like lose their friendship. So it's like told in 2 different timelines, like before this happened and after this happened, etc. And you get to see her life unravel. It's quite sad but really beautiful. Then we have Tokyo Ever After by Emiko Jean. This one follows Izumi, who never knew her father, but then she finds out that her father is the Prince of Japan, which means that she's also a princess. And then it's just like her going to Japan, and then it's like trying to get into this new role in her life. And then she feels like she's not Japanese enough, and then at home she never felt she was white enough. It's a whole thing. She's just caught in between these 2 worlds of like wanting to be a princess and wanting her own life. And it's really fun. And its sequel is coming out later this year. I think it's called Tokyo Dreaming or something. I will put the cover. So yeah, very cute and adorable though. Lots of just cozy fun. Now we are still in YA, but these are more YA historical fiction, but with murder, because they're all by one author, which is of course Junher, who wrote 3 books set back in time with murder. The first one, The Silence of Bones, is set in 1800, and then we have a main character who's a 16-year-old, and she's assisting the inspector following these murders that is happening. Then we have The Force of Stolen Girls, and this one follows this family who got really ruined after one of the sisters disappeared. Our main character and her father like kind of went away from where she disappeared. Then later her father went back, and then he disappeared, and then she goes back as well to try to find him. But then her estranged sister is still living in that village. They kind of left her behind there, and they kind of reconnect to trying to find her father together. So this is also a story of sisters. The author's latest release, we have The Red Palace. And this one, we follow a palace nurse who is, in this book, 18 years old. And then 5 people, or is it 4 people, are murdered in one night. And the crown prince is suspected, as well as her old mentor. So she's going on her own investigation, trying to find out what happened, because she doesn't want her mentor to, like, you know. I didn't say the year for Force and Soft Girls is 1426, and the year for this is 1758 in Korea, all of them. Yay. And now recommending a bit of fiction, but like a bit of other genre. The next 2 ones are poetry, but it's only 2 books, and it's not like it's not like a lot. So we have Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur, as well as The Sun and Our Flowers. Milk and Honey is split in 5 parts. It's basically violence, abuse, love, loss, and femininity. So we just follow like a lot of abuse and sad parts, but also finding beauty in yourself as well. I would say it's beautiful, for me at least. And then in Sun Over Flowers, we have wilting, falling, rooting, and rising, as well, you know, finding beauty within yourself in this one as well. So that was the 2 poetry ones, and then we have 2 non-fiction ones. The first one I actually don't own a physical copy of, which I'm really sad about, but I will fix that, which is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is one of the best non-fiction books I ever read or listened to the audiobook of. And it follows Chanel Miller, who was sexually assaulted, and it follows her life surrounding this, how it happened, when it happened, what happened after, going to trial and everything like that. It will make you cry, it will make you scream. It's truly a marvelous book. Then we have Crying in H Mart by Michelle Sonner. This one follows Michelle's life, especially surrounding the death of her mother and how that had affected her life, when it happened, etc. It's also really beautiful and interesting. And then for the last part of the video, we have 2 graphic novels / 1 manga and 1 manhwa. Theory, of course, I could stand here all day and recommend loads of manga, but I have other videos for that. So this is more just like the ones that you can recommend kind of not separately, but they feel different. I don't know how to describe it. But first we have Uzumaki by Junji Ito. This one is basically set in this town that is spiraling. It's a horror. You have to read it to figure out what I'm talking about, but it's truly uncomfortable but very cool. Then we have Solo Leveling by Chugong. This one is the manga version, but it's also, you know, a light novel if you want to read that instead. And it's truly the best time. So we follow the weakest hunter of mankind, but he still needs to hunt because he is poor and he needs money. That's like the easiest way for him to get him. But then one day he goes on this dungeon quest thing because, you know, that's what he does. And then stuff happens that may change stuff for him. You have to read it to figure it out, but it's just so good. And that was 30+ Asian recommendations video this time around. I really hope you could find something that's interesting here for you. We'll see how much I read within the next year for the video next year. It might be a bit later then. I forgot to mention in the beginning of my video, Asian Readathon is now in May. So now you have many recommendations to read for that. And I will leave the link information to Asian Readathon down below so you can check it out because it's the perfect time, you know? Thank you so much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a rice emoji down below if you enjoy this. And you will see me soon in a new one. Bye!